Gary Kordan is the production designer behind the new sitcom Kenan. I'm Kevin Jacobsen of Gold Derby here with Gary. And just from talking with Kenan, actually, this is a show that underwent a lot of different iterations.
hmm
Where did you actually come along in the process? Were you on board from early on or more of a late addition?
Yeah, I was a late addition. They had shot a pilot a year prior to me even starting. And I actually knew some people that worked on that show and checked in with them. How's your show going? And no one knew anything. And then last year, I had this big year booked, like we all did, in March 2020 hit. I lost all of my jobs and I was looking at a blank calendar for 2020, which is really scary as a production designer. You have crew and construction set deck that rely on you to hopefully work throughout the whole year, and I didn't have that. So March of last year, my first Zoom meeting ever, the first time I heard of Zoom, didn't know how to use it. As a matter of fact, used my cell phone, had it vertically, had my job interview for Kenan season 1. And that was 10 people from NBC and from the crew, from the producers to the director. I stood in my kitchen and had my first Zoom meeting and had that interview. And luckily enough, was hired. So I then, my first Zoom, first month of the pandemic, booked a series. So that's when I came on. And right now we're coming up on a year anniversary of my start date. And now I know how to use Zoom. I have a microphone,
Yeah,
the key
look at you
light.
now. Yeah,
Look at me
the
now.
whole setup. Yes. Well, you have a few main sets on this show, starting with Kenan's house, where he's living with his girls and also his father-in-law and also his brother. So it's a crowded house. There's also the added factor of also, his wife being deceased.
Mhm.
What kind of decisions did you make to sort of create this environment where, the wife is gone, but maybe a part of her is still there in the details of the house, maybe?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up because that played a huge role in trying to design these sets. We were working remotely, so we didn't have the collaboration of being in offices with each other, running over to the producers, showing them mood boards and things that we were working on. We were on our own. My art director, Trisha Robertson, and my set decorator, Julie Drog. We were at home designing and thinking about these characters in that it's a comedy on HBO, it's a comedy on NBC, but it's the seriousness of the subject, which is how do you honor that as a designer? How do you show a family that is obviously living in a house that was designed by their mom a year ago? And then how do you show how the space has fallen apart in the last year? And those choices were made by, I actually texted friends to say, send me friends with lots of kids, send me pictures of your house, send me the ugly details. Where's the mess? Where's the clutter? What starts to fall apart? So in those sets, there's junk and toys under the beautiful coffee table, stuff stacked on top of the refrigerator, drawings. The girls went through the house and did markers all over things that shouldn't be ruined. So what we did was we had a beautiful foundation that was representative of when Kenan's character's wife was alive. And then we had layers and layers and layers of what happens when 3 men are now running the house and can't really keep up. So it was a lot of fun for us to design something beautiful based in Atlanta and, literally try to destroy it every chance we could.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that, like, preparing to talk to you, I really noticed on the first few episodes is just how the layers of details, like you said, sort of pile up there.
Yeah. Thank you.
And we see the exteriors of the house a lot of times. It's just, establishing shots, but then we also, I think we see a few times where Kenan and the other characters are more outside the house, like I think in the squirrel episode, I know there's some of the backyard we see. How did you figure out that area?
Well, because once again, because of COVID, there was a few things that we had to deal with the design of Kenan that was unlike any other job I have ever worked on. Kenan was the first show on the Universal lot to design, prep, build, load in, and shoot during the pandemic. Every other show followed us, and all the other shows had already been in production for seasons before, or they had already shot their pilot and established the world. Mm-hmm. So all of the sets that you see on Kenan that are on stage, the house set, the office, the morning show, we designed them to be open, wider, to allow crew to pass through them easily, because we were concerned about safety as well as making a good looking show. So that leads into the fact that on a show like Kenan, we would normally go out 2 or 3 days a week to shoot on location, perhaps in the Valley Village or Studio City or downtown. Our instructions from our producers were, we are not leaving the lot ever, under no circumstances. So everything that you saw on Kenan throughout the 10 episodes, we figured out a way to do on the Universal Studios backlot. So the house is on Colonial Lane. You might recognize it from movies like The Burbs or TV shows like Desperate Housewives. And we had to make one of those houses work. And we had to find a house that matched. And we had already designed the sets. Now we have access to the lot. We have to have a house exterior that sort of looks like what we had already designed and gotten approved. So what we did was we built the exterior mudroom on the back of one of the houses, painted it blue, matched the set decoration and the translate and the outdoor greens that we had already had on stage, and moved all of that stuff, put it in a truck, drove it up to Colonial Lane, dropped it off, and did our best to make the exterior on Colonial Lane look like what was already established, designed, and built on our soundstage on stage 23, just a quarter mile away on the lot. So it was definitely a challenge, but there's a shorthand that goes along with that, and there's an attention to detail that goes along with that. And even though I'm sure everyone was about to be forgiving because of what we were up against, no one could tell that the exterior of the soundstage wasn't where we shot. And we wanted to make it look like a single camera, so we were up on location.
Yeah, there's definitely a verisimilitude there, which is very good. You've done a lot of work in sketch comedy and sort of things of that nature, but I don't know if you've really done as much of this kind of a family sitcom situation. Did you kind of draw upon other single cam comedies as far as visual palette or sets to sort of figure out the kind of fundamentals in the beginning?
I did not. And the reason I didn't is because my crew that I'm with, my set decorator, Julie and Trisha, and my painters, the construction crew, prop masters, we have all been together for well over 10 years. And so we have a sort of directive, no matter what show we start, whether it's Key and Peele, Workaholics, an Amazon Kids show. Our goal is to never have anything look like a TV show. It has to look cinematic. There has to be layers of paint and age and fingerprints and Post-its and thumbtacks and realistic junk. So whether I'm doing a sketch comedy show with no budget or an NBC primetime half-hour show, we approach it like we're doing Harry Potter, or we approach it like we're doing a Nancy Meyers movie. And there's tricks to do that. And we employ all of them when we do it. So if anything, I always like to say that I want to help redefine the genre of comedy and what people expect for the way comedies should look. And that's why we take the extra steps to age everything, and everything has tons of texture, and the color palette is realistic. The wall paint is realistic. And we spend a lot of time with layering. So that's what we just started working on Kenan and made that and showed up and got approvals on what we created. And to me, it's no different than if we were doing a sketch for Key and Peele and it was a 3-minute house sketch or morning show sketch.
Gotcha. Well, there is also the morning show set, which is a whole other feat unto itself. How did you go about approaching the look of the studio, the on-air part of the set, at least?
Well, I was very lucky. My first job in television, right during junior year of college, I got a job on the Joan Rivers Show, which was a daytime talk show. And because I have really good handwriting and Joan and I hit it off, she made me her cue card boy. So I spent 2 years sitting on the floor holding up cue cards like this for Joan and absorbing what a morning show should feel like, what the layout should feel like, how the colors should be warm, how they should be inviting and feel like daytime. The furniture should be comfortable and not offensive. So I applied everything that I experienced working on a daytime talk show into giving Kenan a Atlanta morning show feel. And also, one thing that a production designer is really responsible for is what will your talent look like on set? You just can't approach a show and say, well, I'm going to make it all blue and gray and have steel. Well, that's not who Kenan is. Kenan is a warm, inviting person, so the set should feel like that. In addition, Kenan is a person of color, and you have to make sure that the backgrounds and the color palette make him look great, and he pops and he looks fantastic and feels at home on his set. So those are big considerations that take place for the morning show. What's unique about that set is that we have a 2-story office space that overlooks the morning show set on the same stage, and that's where Kenan and his characters and his coworkers work at Wake Up with Kenan. And that inspiration came from, there was a 1991 movie called Soap Dish, and it was a soap opera, and the offices of the soap opera were all glass overlooking the set. And Robert Downey Jr. sits in his office, and Whoopi Goldberg comes in and screams and yells at him. And I remember 30 years ago watching that movie and seeing all this stuff in the background happening. There was someone on a forklift, there was someone adjusting lights while Robert Downey Jr. is yelling and screaming at Whoopi Goldberg. And I'm like, one day I'm going to build a set like that. And the minute I saw this pilot script, the first decision was, we are building a 2-story office with glass. And when you're sitting in the conference room, you can see the morning show and you can see a sleeping PA or a guy sweeping up the set and stuff like that as like background little tidbits. So it's a tribute to that movie, that production designer, Eugenio Zanetti, I think his name is. He lives in Italy now. I looked him up. I sent him an email saying, I've honored your movie 30 years later. I hope you don't mind. But that's where that influence came from.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the difficulty in having that sort of 2-story set. What were the challenges in creating all of that?
Well, there's a bunch of challenges. First of all, one thing we dealt with last year was in the deepest, scariest, darkest moments of the pandemic, we were on the NBC studio lot trying to order materials, trying to order lumber, cabinetry, hardware, steel deck, speed rail, and nothing was available. Every vendor was sold out. Some of them were closed. The glass that you see happened by the skin of our teeth because the vendor just didn't have the stock because of the pandemic. Crew wasn't available. Some crew didn't even want to come to work because they were afraid of bringing a sickness home to their families. So while building and designing a 2-story office space and going for it and making some big NBC splash for myself as a designer, you're dealing with both hands tied behind your back and your legs tied too. I mean, it was scary, both wearing a mask and being at work, but it was scary because we didn't know if we could deliver in time. So we just used that 2-story construction as sort of our touchstone, as this, if we can reach this mountaintop, if we can get this second floor up And if we can get it painted and delivered in time, we will have survived and achieved what we tried to achieve. And I will say that I have to, not that they're going to see this, but there's a lot of executives at NBC and Universal Television that gave us the permission to do that. Because I have to tell you, because of the pandemic and safety and budget and the lack of materials, it would have been very easy for them to say, you know what, just make it one floor. If we get picked up for another season, you can add a second floor. None of them said no. And so they gave me permission to have fun and build a dream set. And I think that inspired myself and the set decorator and the set dressers and the painters and construction to be like, regardless of a pandemic, we are going to make this happen.
That's incredible. And so now, having worked with Kenan Thompson for a full season now, and you do have a season 2 coming, what is he been like to work with as a collaborator? What makes him sort of unique?
What makes Kenan unique is that he is such a fan of what we do. I mean, it's almost embarrassing sometimes when a big star or the host of your show that you're working on is like noticing and pointing out the little details and the production design and the little action. We made little action figures of him and hid them in the set. And every time I post on Instagram, I could show you right now. I just posted my little like vote for us, right?
Yes.
Look what the first comment is. Kenan saying,
"Got my vote.
You got my vote."
Wow.
So imagine that kind of feedback coming from your boss who happens to be famous. What happens for the art department is we thrive on the reaction of the crew, the actors, and the star. What people think at home really doesn't matter because it's already aired, you know, and we have to do 60 and 70-hour weeks, and we have to stay engaged and excited through all those hours and pulling off all that work. And the immediate, because it's not a studio audience, you're not getting laughs, you're not having people say great job. The people who are loving it are your coworkers. So if we can make Kenan and Don Johnson and the girls and the gaffer and the DP go, oh my God, I saw that little detail, I love how you guys did that. That's where our energy comes from. And Kenan has been like I almost know the minute I post something on social media that he'll be the first person to like it and comment. And I cannot tell you how rewarding that is. And it gives us the energy to, you know, top ourselves and do a good job for him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you maybe top yourself in season 2. Who knows?
Oh my goodness. Well, look at all these notes and like I'm writing things down.
You're
and
already ready to go.
Drawings. Like this madness right here. That's my brain dump of what I'm thinking for season 2.
That's incredible. Well, for those of you watching, subscribe for more interviews and head to goldderby.com to make your Emmy predictions. Gary, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was fun.